Hi, my name is Leah Day, and welcome to this video for the Free Motion Quilting Project. Today we're working on another new design, and today I'd really like to play with feathers. For some reason I'm craving a new feather design. I think I've decided to call this one Noodle Feather, because we're going to take a traditional, typical feather and fill it with rows and rows of echo quilting, and it kind of reminded me of those beach noodles, we play with them in the pool. For some reason this popped into my head, so we're going to call it this. Let's get on the machine and learn Noodle Feather. So just like all feathers, we're going to get started with a simple wiggly line, working across our quilting space. And now I'm going to just simply stitch right back. We're creating the stem. Feathers are stem-centered designs, and so you always start with this simple stem, two parallel lines. You can come to a point on the ends, or you can leave that wide. It's completely up to you. All right, now for Noodle Feather, we're going to get started and swing out. And I always kind of start with a simple teardrop shape. That's a nice base. Now I'm going to stitch inside of that and fill that space with a simple echo. And I think I might come in here and do two. Just like that. This is almost feeling like paisley. Just those simple lines of repeated echoes. I'll come up again and wiggle my way back in there to form my noodle feather. And it really just depends on how big the feather is, how many times you're going to go inside of it. It looks like these I'm spacing out just right to do about 2 sets of echoes within. It's definitely going to build up the texture within the feather design. These repeated lines of echo quilting are really going to make the feather shape stand out that much more on the surface of your quilt. You can also add extra travel stitching. I always like to travel stitch along my stem a little bit extra to make the texture stand out even more. When it comes to creating that feather shape, the starting very smooth feather shape, it really is a matter of practice and control. The shape is a simple teardrop, but because they build off of one another, they kind of grow together. This is going to be something that you really want to draw a lot. It's something that certainly for me did not come instantaneously. I had to work a lot to get that nice smooth shape. So this is just building up on the surface of the quilt. As they get bigger and longer, you can start spreading and stretching them out. And if they get really, really big and long, if the length of your feather is 3 inches or more, you're going to have to stop and reposition your hands as you stitch it. Just try and keep as much control over the quilt as you can. It's one of those things that's going to come with a lot of practice. But really, even if it goes wiggly wobbly on you, it's no big deal. Now I have this corner here, so I'm going to go on ahead and stitch a nice big feather into that corner. To keep it consistent with the rest of the design, I'm just going to make sure that I fill my echoes in and keep them consistent with what I was doing before. And so even though that feather is going to be big, and it's kind of the supersized version, it's still going to look good, I think. Because those lines are still filling that space. I'm not going to leave it empty and blank. I'm going to leave this, just fill it with 2 echoes. I'm going to come in here and fill it until it's just as filled as the other feathers before it. Even if that means I have to do some travel stitching to get into this feather. So like right here, I'm going to have to do a lot of travel stitching, so I'm just going to bounce here and come in one more time and then travel my way back out. So that looks good. Even though it was big, it still fits with everything else because all those lines were kept consistent. Same thing for this one. This one's a little bit bigger than the ones before, but that's okay. And it really doesn't matter which direction you're echoing. And having stitched this, kind of playing with it right here, I'd really say that this is a great practice design for stitching feathers because you're getting so many repeats of that feather shape. I think think that's really, really excellent. You're getting so many repetitions. Repetition is the key to learning this, because the more often you repeat it, the more your body and your mind is going to remember how to do it. And that means you're going to be able to set down the next time and feel that much more comfortable and confident with it. You know, the more repetitions you have, just like playing the piano, just like, you know, playing soccer or whatever, you know, any kind of physical activity, the more you do it, the more comfortable you get, the more your body remembers how to do it and you don't have to think about it so much. Now that one got a little funky, but that's okay. You know, that's the nice thing about all these lines of quilting, is that they can kind of hide some mistakes. That one was just a little wiggly wobbly, but we're going to start shrinking them down now. Making them a little smaller. I might not be able to fit, you know, 3 full echoes in there, and that's okay. Now you might be wondering why I travel stitch along my stem so much. I really like thread buildup. I like the extra texture it brings, and it can hide some, you know, little travel stitching issues and stuff. So I travel stitch along that stem and make it, you know, build it up and let it stand out really pretty on the surface. So these at the end are super tiny. Just try not to let them collapse too much on you. Get in there and wiggle in with at least 1 echo. And that's it. That is 1/2 of our noodle feather. And here's what it looks like whenever you finish the design completely. So that's it for this video. I really hope that you've enjoyed learning how to quilt this noodle feather design. You know, it's one of those designs that you're learning a lot of things, you're getting a lot of repetitions, a lot of practice at echoing, at travel stitching. I think that this is really going to help you build that feather shape. That feather shape is something that took me months to learn, simply because it's kind of an unusual thing. You know, you're starting with a teardrop and then you're building up off of that and curving out and around, and sometimes the angles just don't look quite right. You know, when I first started, my feathers were kind of all standing upright, more like leaves off of a stem. These you want to kind of flow out, and you know, really more than anything else, it requires practice. If you're really wanting to stitch feathers on a quilt, pick a quilt, anything that you got on your shelf, baste it up, and just stitch feathers all over it. Don't worry about how they look, just stitch them. And I promise by the end of that quilt, you're going to feel so much more confident about that experience. I promise. It's one of those things that just requires a lot of muscle memory to get. So my name is Leah Day, and I hope you've enjoyed this video for the Free Motion Quilting Project. Find hundreds of videos and many other feather designs at freemotionproject.com. Until next time, let's go quilt.